And this is going to be a little bit about, well, basically about marketing. So there may actually be a lot of information we want to share later. I'm not sure yet. We'll find out. At this point, I would ask everybody to be mute, make sure you're muted. And I would suggest that you put yourself on speaker view because we're going to focus on our guests. And I'm going to do ladies first, Roger. Is that okay? So Monica, I'm unmuting you. Hi, Monica. So tell us a little bit more about you. And I think some of us have heard of Ken Davenport. Just let us know a little bit about the guy. Can you unmute yourself?
I unmuted myself. There we go.
Okay.
So you want to start with a little bit about me and my background?
Sure.
Sure. Okay. So I'm Monica. I started out working in the theater as an actor many years ago, went to NYU for drama. I ran my own theater company for about 10 years with a bunch of NYU friends. Then I started working for Ken Davenport. I am his director of marketing. I've been there for about 5 years. Yeah, I've worked on all kinds of things with Ken, from his Broadway shows, Once on this Island, getting the band back together, off-Broadway shows like Daddy Longlegs, worked on the live stream of that as well. And I also run his community of theater makers called the Theater Makers Studio, which is a large part of my job as well.
So would it be fair to say that you and your office had pretty good familiarity with the Zoom world and the virtual world prior to COVID?
Yeah, we do. And I've been working remotely for several months prior to this. Ken's actually moving a lot of our office remotely just as, staying hip with the times, I suppose. That's very Ken. So we've been doing a lot of video chats and meetings this way already.
And Roger, I just want you to know I have you unmuted as well. So anything, any points that you want to jump in on, just feel free. This is as if we're in a room and I've got the two of you in front of the room and we're all listening to you, and Monica says something and Roger, you say, oh, that sounds interesting, but we did this. So let it, be comfortable just jumping in. So I guess let's talk about virtual marketing in general, and then let's talk about whether anything has changed significantly because of COVID. And what those changes entail, and what would be helpful for us to know so that we can attract our audiences to our Zoom presentations and whatever else we're doing.
Yeah, sure. So I can only speak from the projects that I'm working on. I'm not really working on any shows at the moment specifically, but in terms of just marketing in general, I would say that there have been a lot of changes recently due to COVID. The whole world is shifting away from sales messaging into, I'm not going to say something more altruistic necessarily, but less sales, more about building relationships, building community. Yeah, it's a tough time to try to sell things. Obviously, tickets are not something that we can sell at the moment. But yeah, brands of all types are really struggling with marketing messaging at the moment.
What do you think how has the messaging changed as you've seen it in other companies?
Well, I mean, I'm sure everybody here gets emails about, the situation. I know I've been advised by so many different, marketers to really talk to the situation at hand. Don't come into someone's email or a Facebook ad or something and pretend like, everything's fine. You really have to speak to the times and be real with everybody, connect with people. Everybody's struggling, so everyone has something to relate to at the moment. Let's really use that.
Roger, do you want to add anything to that based on your observations?
Yeah, absolutely. And, Monica, nice to meet you face on the screen. Whereas Monica works on Broadway and off-Broadway and those sort of big projects for Davenport Theatricals, I work on a lot of smaller productions, particularly, off-Broadway, off-Broadway, theater festivals, even community theater. So I work with a lot of people who have limited resources, and some are really suffering through this time. I think the big message that I want to get out is that you just need to be communicating. Doesn't matter if you're a writer, playwright, actor, theater company, theater festival show, or a theater festival, but you need to be constantly communicating. There's some publicists here on at this meeting. I mean, reach out to them. You need to communicate two things: what's happening now and how you're dealing with it, so that they know that you're still around. And as much as you can, because it's really difficult to do this, what you plan to do when everything starts to go back to normal, because we may not see normal this year. So that's my key message to my clients. Just get out there and talk about what's happening now. What are you doing?
I would actually say that from my point of view, when COVID suddenly became a quarantine, you interviewed me, Roger, so you know I went through this. I went through like a dark night of the soul. I didn't know what to do. And
Yeah.
I spent 3 or 4 weeks just shaking my head going, what do we do? What? And then I finally realized what you just said, which is that it's more important just to have some sort of visibility, to let people know that we're still alive and well and doing whatever we can. So that's why I started this community room, because it was something that I could do without having to have a lot of complicated moving parts. Just seemed to me that what was needed right now was community, and that I wanted to offer people that I knew and were in the TRU community an opportunity to get together and just talk and just say what they're going through. But we're also heading towards a point where we're going to be doing a virtual play reading series. So I'm eager to hear from you and Monica what tactics, what strategies, what tools are useful for getting the word out for those things, and how do we compete with the hundreds of others that are being done at the same time. So Monica or Roger, take that. Take that.
Go ahead, Monica.
Monica.
Well, I am finding that we like to do the opposite of what a lot of people do. So a lot of people right now are scaling back on ad spend. I know that all of the advertisers right now are hurting so badly. Broadway World, Theater Mania, Playbill, everybody is their ad, but everything has been cut to zero. So these people are really willing to work with all types of businesses, live theater. Some people still only work with live theater. So I would definitely recommend reaching out to these different companies and seeing if you could get some email blasts, either, pro bono or for an incredibly discounted rate to promote yourself. Email still works great, even if we're all virtual, especially since you can easily send links and everything. That's one thing we've been doing. I've actually increased our ad spend by about 400% recently, because we've been getting such incredible deals, and also building relationships with these vendors who are really struggling. So us giving them money now is really helpful for them, and it's helpful for us. That's something we're doing.
And in any ways, when you've been using these e-blasts in advertising, how have you positioned yourself? What is your messaging been like?
Well, I'll be honest, so a lot of things I'm marketing right now is either free opportunities, like we're doing a free trial of the Theater Maker Studio. We don't want, people aren't really buying things right now. So trying to position it as, we're just giving you something to do. We want to keep you engaged. We want to keep you excited. Just people are so starved for entertainment right now. So that's one angle that we've been going with. And then also just trying to flip, call out that this is virtual. This is something you can do from home in safety, specifically using those words, from the safety of your home. It helps tap into people's emotional response to that as well.
Roger, have you been doing any kind of outreach for clients right now, or are people on hold? What's happening in the world for you?
It's interesting that you talk about being on hold, because I remember when you and I connected a couple of weeks ago, we were all pretty much on hold. It was a little bit of a shock. It was a great shock for us to all of a sudden not know what to do next. And so that period, I think, is sort of winding down to some extent. My clients, a lot of them just, didn't know. I have shows that were supposed to open, readings that were supposed to open during this stay-at-home crisis, and we're hoping to move the show forward to July or something. I had theater festivals that were moving ahead with the anticipation and hope that nothing would change, that by the time they were scheduled to go on, everything would just be back to normal. And I asked for statements from a lot of different clients to see where they were going. And what I found out was that they didn't know anything. They were sort of in shock, kind of, entrenching themselves and regrouping. Now, I'm seeing them slowly come out of the woodwork, so, under the rock, and talk about, okay, maybe we won't have this festival in August, but we will have it next year. Or maybe, we won't have the same cast, or we won't have the same type of show, but we will plan to have it, later in the year or next year. So yeah, I think a lot of my clients have just, stopped everything. And so that goes to the core of what I said earlier, which is, communications, and you have to have a message. You don't need a big budget. If you can afford to do it with negotiating with some of the, the theater websites and things like that, absolutely right. I mean, localtheaterny.com hasn't pitched anything, hasn't talked about selling anything. I haven't asked anybody, and I've suggested that to my clients. It's not a good time to try to sell. So, I think moving forward right now to the end of maybe June or July is a good time to start thinking about what your message is and start getting it out there.
It's also, I'm just going to chime in there too.
No, go. I didn't hear what you said.
I was going to say it's also, that's okay. One of our strategies right now is really, we're actually working with the Broadway League on this as well, to engage audiences and keep them with us, is lead generation and building an email list. Now is just the best time to do that. If you can't sell anything, emails in a way are currency, so you're getting value that way, so that when we are all ready to come back, you can blast the heck out of every single person who loves theater, get them coming back and supporting, what we do and what all of us here do. So I would highly recommend trying to build up your email list right now. And that can be through just driving, creating new content, inviting people to free readings. Yeah.
So I have a question about audience. Oh, Roger, go for it. I'll come back to my question. Roger?
Yeah, what I was going to say, just, adding on to what Monica said, she's right. I'm telling people, work on your website, make connections. This is a great time to network. You don't have to network in person. There are 43 people on this Zoom who are now talking to each other. So great time to network, reach out to producers or maybe potential investors down the line that you normally wouldn't be able to reach. So as far as working on, what material you have, this is the perfect time. Update your website, work on your script, come up with a strategy. This is a perfect time to think. If everything was great, everything was the way it was when it ended, what would be my strategy? Yeah, and then definitely ask a question about audiences, because I was going to talk about that too.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually put that one on hold for a second, because I want to go back to this conversation. We really haven't identified. We've identified e-blasts. We've identified going to advertisers who don't have much going on, who might be able to offer us opportunities to advertise or e-blast through them. What about social media? Is social media taking a bigger part now in building awareness, or the same part that it's always taken?
Oh, I think social media, look, before I even say anything about social media, let's just remember that we came originally, especially some of the folks here who are my age and older, you came from a traditional media world that was around for decades. And I remember when I was running, El Diario La Prensa in New York, and there was this resistance to convert to anything digital, because how do you monetize it? It's a good thing this COVID crisis did not happen back then, because we would have a hell of a hard time trying to connect with our existing audience or even potential audience. Without money, you couldn't do it. But social media today really is a gift to have. Anyone, any of you out there, if you don't have a penny but you want to get the word out, how easy is it to do a video on your phone, on your iPhone, and talk about your project, talk about your dreams, talk about what you want to do once this ends? How easy is it to do a post? And if you decide to spend a few bucks, which I recommend if you can afford it, Instagram and Facebook and Twitter are not that expensive. You can target and retarget and hit the right audience and not spend a lot of money. So it's pretty much open to any budget. So digital media and social media are definitely now and the future.
Okay, great. I'm going to go to Monica in a second, but I also want to just say to the room right now, if you open up your participants screen, at the bottom of it, there's the virtual hand raise. So as we're having this conversation, feel free to raise your hand. I will do my best, and Sandy will do our best to keep an eye out for any questions that come up. Monica, did you want to add anything to what Roger just was saying?
Yeah. Something that I've also found is that really talented actors, Broadway, off-Broadway, etc., everybody's out of work right now. Actors are some of the hardest hit. So as I'm sure a lot of people here are writers and producers, so find their emails, contact these actors. Is there an actor that you've always wanted to work with? Reach out to them, see if they want to perform a monologue of yours or do an informal reading. It's a really great chance to start, like you were saying, Roger, building your network. And also, like, you could have that on your Instagram and your Facebook. You could boost that to theater lovers. And it's just it's a really great chance to start building your own personal brand. And, if you have a show that you're working on, really start building some content with some potentially really awesome people.
And just so everybody knows, because we've been talking about Equity's position on all of that, as long as you're not inviting an audience, you can do any kind of developmental work you want to, and you can use any kind of Equity actors, your dream actors. You just can't necessarily invite an audience, but you can invite a coterie of friends who are advisors or people that are involved with you creatively. We're going to talk about that in detail next Friday. We're going to have some general managers and lawyers, including Lee. Lee's coming back again. And we're going to sort of give you what we know at this point about where we are with the reading situation with Equity versus SAG and AFTRA. Long story. What I wanted to say before was, who is the virtual audience, and is it different from the theater-going audience that we know? One of our, Bobby Horowitz actually says she wants to know whether virtual may actually attract new viewers to theater. Now this is crystal ball stuff, and this is just your best guess. But for conversation point purpose, what would you say?
I personally have actually been surprised how similar the virtual audience is to the Broadway going audience, the theater going audience. I mean, I've seen a lot of people paying for virtual products, games, entertainment that are in the 40 plus, largely female crowd. So I've been a little surprised by that, but it kind of seems like everybody's getting hip to Zoom and virtual content these days. You kind of have to. But then of course, depending on, where you're targeting your audience, it could certainly skew younger. I was talking to Broadway Roulette today. I'm working on a partnership with them, and their audience is significantly younger than that. So I think it depends on where you're finding your audience. I
think that we've found over the years, and your boss himself actually did a show that used an app with the audience. We've been theorizing that the younger audience is so inured in social media that bringing any kind of aspect of social media into theater is possibly a way of attracting a younger audience. We've always been sort of troubled by how do we get younger audiences in. That's always been an issue for theater. On that, do you want to talk about what Ken did with the audience apps at the intermission? It was on the West Coast, I think. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah. There's a couple, he's used technology in a couple of different things. I know when I was working on that Bachelorette show, I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but we actually created an app for that show so that people could vote for like the Bachelor they wanted to win in real time. It's like an interactive play. And that definitely skewed for a younger audience, but for many reasons outside of just the technical elements. But yeah, I definitely think that integrating tech and interactive elements, virtual elements could be one way to tap into younger audiences, definitely. I think it's also about, you know, the theme of the shows as well.
So one of the positive aspects of what we're going through now is so many of us are being forced to finally learn how to use this technology. So let's be proud of ourselves for getting as far as we're getting this with all of it. Roger, did you want to add anything?
Well, I still believe that, and Monica is 100% right. The audiences are out there, and you're right in saying that they're engaged with social media. I still believe in finding or defining or you know, knowing what your audience is for whatever your project is or whatever your work is first, and then finding a connection to what media they prefer to use. And that still applies today. So if your show targets younger people, you know, Instagram and TikTok are viable tools to reach younger audiences. If your audiences are a little bit older, then Facebook is the place, obviously, to go. And it has to be a media mix because, as you can see now, a lot of us are not on one platform. A lot of us are not only on Facebook, are not only on Instagram, and so on. So where is your audience is the question you should be asking. And that audience is going to be there more because what else are they going to do? So yeah, I think social media and finding your audiences on social media is definitely the way to go if you start with knowing who you know, what your audience is.
Murray, you have a question. Murray Davis. I'll unmute you.
Thanks. It's a question and a statement. Everybody already said this. The fact is that when we're looking at who the audience is online, the difference is that we have no options, so that's where they're going. But what I've seen is just recently, I saw 2 plays online that were the closest thing to what you could actually see on Broadway. And so I think the fact that when people are looking at doing Zoom, if they do the best practices of all the things you can utilize, it comes as close as possible to what you would see on a stage in terms of facial expressions and mannerisms and using prop kind of things that can convey, you know, what the stage director would be saying. I think it's going to make a huge difference in terms of how it goes forward and how people could really switch. In other words, if you don't feel like going out tonight, but you might choose to stay home depending on how good it is. That's my statement.
Okay, thank you. Monica or Roger, I don't know, do you know how to integrate? This is something I have to learn because we're going to do a Zoom reading series, and I understand that I can somehow hook it up with Facebook. What is that process?
I helped Peter Breger set that up for a live stream that he did over at the Off-Broadway Alliance, so I can certainly work with us to make that happen.
Well, can you explain to the room what we're talking about?
Yes, it's possible to take a Zoom session and then create it as a Facebook live streaming window in Facebook. It's not interactive at that point, but it allows people who have Facebook access but are not involved in the Zoom meeting to actually observe and hear what's going on. It happens at about a 20-second delay from what's happening in the Zoom meeting.
So
Oh, that's cool.
So back to the marketing aspect of it, Monica and Roger, best guesses. What do you think are the most effective ways of using social media to get people to your Zoom present? Actually, I keep saying Zoom. Monica, do you know any other platforms that you work with? And Roger, do you work with other platforms besides Zoom? We don't have to be married to Zoom right now, even though we're in Zoom right now.
I pretty exclusively use Zoom. There's House Party as well. I think that's the app. Roger, do you know about that one?
I've heard of it.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't used it. I think that one definitely skews a little younger, but I prefer Zoom.
I have people who live in my building from other countries. It's a condo, but they come in because we're near the UN, and moved here. And they said that they didn't think that much of going to theater when they came here, you know, and they're seeing things online. And they're saying, my God, I love that. I mean, when that happens again, I want to go. I want to be part of it. I want to see it online. So I think we could teach a lot of people about it.
To get going before about how can we use virtual our virtual world right now to attract theater goers and or at least keep our existing theater goers.
Bob?
Yeah.
So I wanted to add something. I don't know if Emelina's still here, but oh, there she is. So I interviewed Emelina the similar way that I interviewed you, and she said something which really stuck with me, and that is that if you're in the middle of producing something, in the process of creating something, a play, a project, or something like that, it may need to be different after this whole thing ends. It may have to have elements that it didn't have before, and I thought that was a very fascinating thing to consider. We don't know if preferences will change. We don't know if people now will find more comfort in watching a great videotape production of a stage show. I know I enjoy seeing some and I hate seeing others, depends on the quality. But moving forward, we're definitely going to be creating and marketing things differently than we did before this thing.
Well, I think what's happening right now is we're all being forced to consider virtual presentations its own form, its own media, its own medium. Basically, we used to make mistakes of trying to film theater pieces instead of to the screen. We have to basically embrace the tools that are available to us and what works best within the medium that we're working. And the virtual medium has its own tools, its own toolbox, its own set of rules, its own set of what works and what doesn't work, and it's different from theater. So you might develop a show in a medium, and then, as you're saying, when you move it on stage, suddenly you have interaction, you have action, people moving. So can people mute themselves that are not speaking? Okay. All right. So anyway, where are you, Roger? I've lost you.
I'm here.
Okay, there you are. So that's all I wanted to say. I just think that we have to accept virtual presentations as its own medium. We have to really evaluate what works and what doesn't work virtually, not necessarily try to make that show into a movie, or that movie into a TV show, or that TV show into a show. We just take the things the tools that are available to us in each medium and rethink the core of what we're doing so that it works appropriately and best within the medium that we're working. That's all.
You know, and as part of that process, and as part of bringing in the marketing element into that, this is a great time to kind of get feedback from the people that your stakeholders, if you will, anybody that's involved in your production, anybody who's financing your production, anybody that follows your shows or your work. Find out what their preferences are. Keep communicating. Ask questions. That should be part of your marketing. Ask questions about, did you like the way this worked? Did this not work? And evolve along with, with everything that's evolving. That would definitely be something I recommend.
Monica, any thoughts about that?
No, I just started thinking in my head about a slight tangent about just, you were talking about these preferences, like how will people's preferences change in terms of watching things virtually versus live? I think obviously people will always love to see live theater and probably prefer that. But I remember when I was in high school, I got my hands on a VHS at the time of Into the Woods, the Broadway production. And obviously I couldn't see it live. I lived in Missouri, and it changed my life. So I wonder how, recording theater or live streaming theater or Zooming theater or platforms like Broadway HD, I wonder how those will change in the future after this, and maybe become a new revenue stream for theatrical productions and opening up to audiences who can't necessarily travel to New York.
Hopefully we're hooking these thousands and thousands of theater goers on virtual presentations. So eventually charge for them, because it's a cool experience. Well, the thing is that virtual is basically a hybrid between theater and film, because it's really a close-up medium. You can do things that can expand it a little bit beyond the close-up, but it's not really a full-body medium. Although I've seen some virtual presentations in which the camera was far away and people did their moves, and it's always seemed to be a little awkward, but it's doable. But it's not necessarily what virtual does best. What virtual does best is hone in on the nuance of the facial expression, the nuance of your speech. You can't overdo it. You can't over-emote in virtual. probably can go bigger when you go on stage, but you have to keep it small, I think, when you're doing virtual presentation. I see Jonathan Slaff has his hand raised. So
yeah, hi. Bob, I wanted to address your question about whether there was an alternative to Zoom. And my research of the last day or so tells me that Google Meet is possibly even superior to Zoom. It has the possibility of a larger, more reliable server base, so you'll have less latency and technical problems. And it leaves open the possibility for tiling more performers simultaneously on screen in different configurations, and also a larger audience base, because it allows up to 1,000 participants and then an unlimited audience. Google Meet is the successor to Google Hangouts, and it's free until I think the date is September 6th, after which it will be paid. But that's plenty of time for all of us to experiment with it and develop many things, many techniques for this new medium.
So Lee, I see, if I can't unmute you for some odd reason, but Lee, you were, I think, responding to Jonathan.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that I posted in the chat a list of other platforms. I participated in the 2-day CTI webinar on indie theater that was yesterday and today, and different producers who were represented there said that they had used different platforms such as, well, you already heard about Google Hangouts, but StreamYard, Zencaster, Skype We Know, Facebook Live, Instagram Live, and Twitch. And some of them have advantages that others don't. So it's just a question of just peeking into them and seeing what might work best for your project. That is all.
I want to say, Bob, you know, one of the things somebody's talking, one of the things we could definitely look forward to is that these companies realize exactly the same thing that we're realizing. And so there will be a really strong extended development of software and apps probably within the next 3 to 6 months. You're going to see a whole new world of brand new, you know, players in the field and improvements. I'm getting emails all the time, you know, from different platforms saying we've improved this or we've improved that. So, you know, it's going to force us to just stay on top of things and keep trying new things. And I think, you know, TRU is again, I congratulate you for being on top of things so early and having the conversation so early, because this is a forum where we can, you know, exchange that kind of information.
It's so funny because I thought I was late to the table because I waited 2 weeks.
I don't think so, no, because I know that a lot of my clients, I mean, these are smaller productions, and in some cases, they're putting all the money that they can grab, you know, maybe life savings and pieces from small investors and things into a production. And when this happened, they just froze. Like, what do we do now? And I'm glad that you were there to kind of begin asking those questions and answering them. The timing, I think, was great.
Well, thank you. LY, you put your hand down. Did you still want to say something? You had it up for a long time. LY, okay.
There we go. Sorry about that. Well, no, I mean, you kind of had moved on away from the point, but I was going to speak toward, you were talking about the medium in which to write and everything, and it's a question I have been posing for the past several weeks. I have posed it to some of your people outside, and I've actually come up with the man with the floppy ears here. I have spent the last 3 weeks rewriting it from stage to a Zoom format, and I based my format off of radio drama. So coming from that perspective, because we can't have a full image, and then took considerations for visuals along with that. And so it's available to anyone that would like to look over it as a form review. I'm completely open to getting critiques and a way to improve this format.
We're back to the creative conversation in a marketing panel, but I just want to say, in this response to LY, it's not purely an audio medium. It really is a visual medium. We just have to find out how to use those visuals. So again, it has to do with nuance of facial expression, but some body language to an extent. one thing that we've talked about in past weeks is I think it's crucial if we all want to really come off professional in what we're doing, we need to look at virtual backgrounds. We can't have 5 actors in 5 different messy bedrooms. We want to basically, we can download something that is uniform for everybody, or keep everybody on a black background or a white background.
I took all of these considerations into this reformatting, so it's all there.
I wanted to say, because you had talked about radio plays, I just want to say that we don't want to forget the visual aspects of it, and we have to do what we
No,
can.
I don't at all, but I'm just saying, as a way to put the dialogue out there, since you don't have all of this other stage production or television production, it's still, by going through the idea of a radio format, the dialogue is the important part that way. But there are tons of camera cues, there are tons of background changes, there are costume suggestions, there are props to pass in and out of visuals. It's all there.
Yeah, that's the stuff I want everybody to think about, because it is a creative medium with a lot more potential than we originally gave it credit for. I think we're learning more about it as we're working in it. Let's get back to marketing. Monica, still with us? Where are you?
I am. I was muted.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
Back. Any other tips and thoughts that you want to share in terms of marketing during COVID? I'm trying to get as much specifics out for people to go, oh, I can do that. Oh, I can do that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about like specific social media strategy. Content. If you don't know what to post in terms of content for your show or yourself, try different things. Look at your Facebook or Instagram analytics and just see what people are responding to the best, and then do more of that. Really, it's all about creating consistent content on a consistent schedule that people can start to expect and look forward to. That's one key to building an audience on social media for sure.
That's something we pull from basic marketing in the other world.
Yeah. I don't know that it's that different, other than the messaging and positioning that you frame around everything.
But what you said about the consistency of the messaging is important. And we always have to be very careful to keep giving the same, or at least within a world of the same message. We don't want to confuse people about what our product is. We want to make sure that they hear it and they hear it again and they hear it again. They just know what it is that they're expecting to see. So consistency is still key. Jonathan, you're in PR. Do you want to give us any? I mean, you don't have to jump in, but if you want to jump in and give us a little bit about what's going on for you as a press agent, and how whether press releases are being sent out now, are they useful? Do you send to a different place than you had before?
Well, once again, I think we're in a situation where there are more tools and all of them are less effective. So I'm having to do more in each campaign than I ever did before.
Say that again?
I said, I think we're in a situation where we have more tools and all of them are less effective. So I find myself having to do more than I used to have to do in the days when we had a good population of print news outlets. I'm representing the Lower East Side Festival of the Arts at Theater for the New City now. And that is a festival with 150 acts, most of which are delivered by Vimeo, linked to the theater's website, and some live streaming. And I have put out 2 press releases so far. And I deputized the entire committee of the festival, the people that work with Crystal Field, the artistic director of the theater. We have a committee of about 25 people, and we got volunteers, each of whom are placing listings for each genre. So the festival does include 9 artistic genres, everything from literary artists to musical artists to theater artists to dance artists. I mean, you can go through and count them. And we have one person working on each genre. And it's a tricky thing because these listings will compete with each other if they just went by the name of the festival as the title of the event. So I'm having each genre identify itself in the listings as, for example, music of the Lower East Side Festival of the Arts, or puppetry of the musical of the Lower East Side Festival of the Arts. In addition to that, we have the theater's social media staff working on it, and we're pumping down as much visual content as we can right now, because social media lives on visuals. And we're having a dickens of a time collecting decent artwork from all the participating shows, because we asked for their material on video, but we didn't ask them for stills. So we're learning as we go along. We don't have much to choose from, so we're grasping for what we can get. In addition to that, we're hopeful that people will employ their own social media to help get an audience for what they are putting up. So in a way, there's a pass along, a deputizing of marketing from us to the participants, and there's no magic bullet yet, and nothing has appeared to be something that really works. Everything works sort of.
Well, I just want to jump in and say, in any festival situation, the participants really have an obligation to do some of their own marketing. They can't depend on the festival to sell their tickets necessarily. As much as we want to, and as hard as we try, it really, each show needs to really promote itself. Van Dirk, are you there? No, Van, we must have lost him. All right. I have to see who's still here. No, Van's here. Well, it's okay. So we're open for questions right now. So please raise your hand if you'd like to ask something. I think there's a lot more information we can pull out of these guys if they just knew what it is we wanted to know. You're all here. Come on. Oh, nobody's raising their hand. All right. So then I guess we're kind of at the end of the meeting because we don't have any questions and answers. Oh, Melina, okay, it's not a virtual hand raise, but it's a hand raise nevertheless. And Jeffrey.
Yeah, sorry, this was faster, but
you're breaking up.
I had a question about, and actually, Roger,
you're breaking up.
Oh, poop. I was just saying that I wanted to bring up people's thoughts on how audience. Oh. Yeah. All right. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Turn off your video.
Okay, I'll try. Oh, that's a good idea. Okay. So anyways, I was just Roger had referenced earlier kind of my comment about how things were changing, and I specifically was talking about content. And I'm curious how we've been talking a lot about the platforms and how we produce, but I'm curious people's thoughts on how audiences' tastes are going to change regarding content. So, how, when the country's going through crisis, writers tend to go towards comedy, that kind of thing. So I'm curious as far as what people think the trends are regarding
audiences, New York and DC audiences, and the absolute surprise of the whole poll was that people were not looking for lighter fare. People were not looking to escape. So the content they wanted, they were not expecting the content to change because we're going through COVID. They were looking for deep, serious, meaningful content. It wasn't escape.
Jeffrey has his hand up.
Jeffrey.
Go ahead, Jeffrey. I'll unmute you.
Okay, there we go. So the point was made about now is not the best time to try to monetize, just use the platform to get your work out there. But already, there are companies like Broadway HD that are selling fully produced things already. And there are theater companies that are trying to get people to either donate or pay X amount of dollars for whatever their archival content they're putting up now. As we move into this discussion of what's possible on the virtual platform, the Zoom platform, we're going to get a lot more productions that are not going to be fully produced. And yet we still have expenses in organizing them and need to find a way to monetize them. Does anyone have any thoughts about how the best ways to create value that we can find a way to monetize these experiences? If this is as far as we can get, in producing under the circumstance.
I have one suggestion, and what I've been doing. I've been doing a pay what you can. So you give the audience. Basically, we're in a crisis situation where we want to be sharing our art with people, and we want to give people the opportunity to be able to see us, not necessarily having to pay. But I find that by offering a pay what you can and letting people know that you have expenses to cover, but you would appreciate whatever support. That's a very unaggressive way of doing it. You could just charge what you want to charge. I'm trying to figure out what to charge right now, because in order to do the TRU play reading series through the Theater Authority, it has to be a legitimate fundraiser. So we literally have to raise money for our play reading series. So there's going to be a donate button, and I'm just working it all out. I don't even know.
What have people discovered about the willingness of audiences to respond to that kind of pitch or any other kind of pitch to engage financially in this?
Well, I would say that on the panel that I did last month on solo performance, it was a pay what you can, and we had about 72 people, and we brought in about $250.
Okay.
It wasn't great, but it was not bad. It was something.
Traditionally,
you can also monetize Facebook content in different ways, encourage people to donate. I know like Ken's doing a nightly live stream, and we've raised, I think it's close to $10,000 for actors, actor cares, whatever. Sorry, I have an 8-week-old baby, so my brain is a little fried by 6 p.m. on Friday. But yeah, definitely donations, I think, are a really great way to monetize. And I think people are responding to that better than paid opportunities for the most part.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because that was the direction I was going, and I was thinking, am I just being wimpy?
No, I think it's important to position yourself as not being greedy at this time as well.
Yeah.
I have another question for Monica specifically, unless I'm overstaying my welcome here.
Yeah, we've got 3 hands up, so let's
come back to me.
Hold that until we have a little more time. Tita, why don't you give us your question?
Okay, I'm unmuted. I have a question, not about content, but how audience preferences are changing. And the reason I ask is, I've noticed if a show is not designed for Zoom, it often feels very flat, and people seem to have short attention spans, minimal kind of ADD, looking around, and want interactive. They expect to be able to comment on something or ask questions. So I'm curious about how the audience preferences are changing.
Thoughts?
I don't know that I have a definitive answer to that, but my thought is that there's definitely some shows that, outside of just an informal reading, might want to wait until some of this is over to do a full production. I totally agree that some things fall flat, and I've definitely heard from peers that have popped in on different online performances, and they felt really disappointed in some of them. And so as a person creating this, I wonder if it's better to just wait until you can really fully produce it, instead of getting it done now, getting it in front of people when it might not be the best format for that.
Thank you, Monica. Let's go ahead and move on to Jonathan. You had another question.
Yeah, 2 things. First of all,
talking to your.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I see. I have to have the mic close to my mouth here. Are you hearing me now, Bob?
So much better.
Oh, good. I'm always going conceptually from the idea that we learned from audience surveys in past decades that nobody resents any requests for contributions from any of the nonprofits or any of the theaters. But I was wondering if you have any wisdom or what the best practices are on configuring the contribution relevant to the screen which is being presented. And second, if people are fully using Venmo, because that will open us up, I believe, much more to the contributions from the younger audience who are very devoted to it.
I can't speak to the technical elements really, personally.
I would think that it would be fairly simple to advertise a Venmo address to take contributions, and you're absolutely right, Jonathan. It's a very common payment service used by younger generations. So I'm not sure that you have to limit yourself to one type of pay gate as you see contributions for performances that you're streaming.
Yeah, to add to that, I would say use at least 2 or 3 different ways for people to either pay or donate. You know, some people prefer, just like they prefer different platforms, they prefer different platforms to pay. You know, to address the thing about monetizing this moment, I just, the only ones I've seen kind of try to do that are acting schools and acting coaches who have offered, you know, classes on Zoom at a much lower rate, sort of to bring in new students. And that's something that's been done in the acting coaching community for many years. You know, you have a $5, you know, class that's sort of like, you know, a test class, if you will. There's a name for it, but I'm blanking out. And then these people, either they like you or you don't, and then they'll come and pay you the full rate. But I really haven't seen too much beyond give what you can or free. I wish I had information on that. I'd love to know.
Van Fisher, I'm taking you.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen a couple of times when people have done things online, and then at the end, you know, for donations or, you know, any type of contributions, they provided their Venmo email or their PayPal email so people can give whatever they want. I do feel that, you know, also giving to a cause. We did that we put together Music for America. We were supposed to do our festival with different singers. And so in the meantime, I got 7 singers together and they talked about, you know, what we're going through now with the pandemic. And then, you know, they showed their music video. And then we also asked people to donate to, you know, Feeding America and the First Responders Children's Foundation. So I think if you identify with people in terms of what we're going through now, and then also, you know, at the end, you know, also ask if they'd like to make a contribution to your organization, they might be open to it in that way. But I think what Monica said earlier, we do have to deal with actually talking about what everybody's going through now. Some of the benefits I found from working on Zoom and connecting with people is that it's allowed you to, you know, get together with friends and family that are all over the world. So I think that could be a benefit to us in terms of expanding our audience for theater, especially when those people decide to come to New York City. So that's pretty much all I have to say.
Stephanie Schwartz. Stephanie? I took you off mute, so I don't know why we can't hear you.
I have something to piggyback on if we have 2 seconds here.
Sure.
Just going back to what you were just saying, the more that I think about it, the more that I do think donations are probably the right way to go. When you give someone something free, they feel in some way personally obligated to give you something in return for that. Now, of course, not everybody will donate, but it's the principle of reciprocity. So you give them a free show and you say, it costs X amount, it costs us $10,000 to put on this show. The value of this ticket would have been $100. We're asking you to donate 10. I bet you everybody will donate $10. But I don't know that everybody would have paid you $10 on Eventbrite to come to your show to begin with. I don't know.
I have a question for Antonia. You pushed the go slower button. What are we doing that's going to?
Sorry.
Oh, I thought we were going too fast for some about.
No, sorry, I pushed the wrong button. Sorry about that. Sorry.
Guys.
I don't know how to undo it. If you can hear me, I don't know how to undo it.
I'll mute you. I can mute you now. You're muted. So Stephanie, I don't know how to. Stephanie, type your question into the chat, and I will share the question with the room because your sound is not working.
Antonia, you can just click that button a second time and it'll toggle it off.
I have her muted. Oh, I see the button.
Yeah. you click the go slower button again, Antonia, it should click off.
Oh, that's what you can undo. So, Stephanie, can you type into the chat your question so that we can ask it for you? Okay, Roger has a comment about product and pricing. So Roger, take it away.
Oh, I'd like to say before we close, one very key thing which I talk to my non-theater clients about, and that is your product. It's not business as usual, so your product will change, and whatever it is that you're putting out there, whether it's acting classes or a reading or an actual production or a one-man show, one-woman show on Zoom, you have to remember that it is a different type of product from the typical live performance that you would get at a Broadway show or an off-Broadway production or something like that. So the pricing has to kind of match. And one of the biggest mistakes people are doing during this COVID thing is to lower their prices too much, taking into consideration that things are bad for a lot of people. But remember that when this begins to go back to normal, the perception of what a ticket is worth is going to change dramatically. So I think, like Monica said, hold off if you have a production that really merits a full production when everyone is back, and create something different, create a different product and price it differently, ask for a donation, as Van said. But keep that in mind, product and pricing have to kind of balance out, and you have to not forget that at some point you're gonna come back.
Okay, so Monica, thank you for being with us, and Roger, thank you for being with us, and everybody, next Friday, I know for a fact that I'm going to have attorney Lee Feldshaw, and I'm going to have general manager Martin Platt, and possibly an additional lawyer and general manager, and we're going to talk about what we know at this point about the do's and don'ts of doing virtual presentations, using unions or not using unions. So I know we touched on this before, but we're gathering more information. Hopefully we'll have a more complete picture of it next week. And also, Roger, at some point I really do want to give them the details of all of the platforms that we've researched. We've researched a lot of platforms. We don't know what their pluses and minuses are, so we're working on that so that when we present it to you, we can actually tell you why to use one platform over another. Emelina, do you want to say anything before we leave?
That there will be an upcoming interview with Bob Ost that everyone's going to want to catch. So it's part of my Another Way series. So my final words are that there is always another way. And for anyone who is struggling, getting their heads around Zoom or getting their heads around the whole pandemic and producing, there is always another way that works for you. So I wouldn't beat yourself up over being late to the game or any of that. So keep at it and check out Bob. We'll send out information about where you can see him. We'll be streaming it on Facebook. I use BeLive.tv, actually. That's the platform I use. So thank you. Thank you.
I've invited everybody.
I've seen a lot of good things on YouTube.
So what was that, YouTube?
I don't know why my sound keeps cutting in and out.
Oh, that's Stephanie.
But
can't hear anything.
And I'll hopefully see you next week. Email me if you suddenly have some questions that you didn't ask today that you thought about. We're trying to keep it on marketing. It's a hard topic because there's so many things going on for us right now during COVID, and yeah, marketing is part of it, but so much of it is what do we do? What do we do? So hopefully we keep coming back to that and answering questions and answering your concerns and coming up with some answers that will be useful. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next week, guys.
Bye.
Bye, Sandy.
Thank you.
Janet, how are you?
I'm fine. This is excellent. Thank you, everyone. Excellent.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
See you, Bob.
Take care.
Bob.
Bye, everybody.
Bye,
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Is